Hey everyone, State Journal columnist Jim Polzin with you. After Aaron Rodgers' appearance on the Pat McAfee show, I think it was very clear over the last 3 weeks that Aaron Rodgers was not going to be the starting quarterback for the Packers any longer. And today I think it became unofficially official, no trade just yet, but Aaron Rodgers made it very clear that he's spoken with the Jets, has moved on. I think the money quote from his time, his almost hour with McAfee was, "They want to move on, and now so do I." So we have heard Aaron Rodgers' version of the story. I think we did for over an hour of just kind of, he laid out a timeline. Went into the offseason thinking that the Packers were ready to move on, but they told him to take his time. He went into the darkness retreat, and he said he was 90% certain he was going to retire, 10% that he would come back. Came out of that, he said his phone had blown up. He's hearing from players around the league that the Packers were shopping him, and that's when it became clear to him that this was going to come to an end in Green Bay. So again, that's Aaron Rodgers' version. We have not heard from the Packers, so take that with a grain of salt. But again, I think the tea leaves have been leaning this way for over a week, and this was never going to be not messy. We saw this with Brett Favre 15 years ago. When you're a franchise quarterback for this long and you don't end your career with that franchise, it's going to be a little bit messy. I think this is a little bit less messy than the Brett Favre ending, although it's certainly not over yet. This could get messy in the offseason. But I think Aaron Rodgers at least says there's no bitterness. He went down a long list of people that he respects in Green Bay, loves the fans. I think it's pretty clear that he's not happy with Brian Gutekunst, Mark Murphy, and some of the others. He talked about it as a new regime. These are not the people that drafted him. This was not Bob Harlan as team president. This was not Ted Thompson as general manager. And so I think that relationship got frayed over the last couple years, and that's part of the reason why he's out now. I think if it's not clear to you already that the compensation the Packers are going to get for him is not going to be that good, you need to brace yourself for that, because it's not going to be a huge package. And I don't think Rodgers going on the McAfee show and talking about it today is going to help matters any. Really, I think the Jets have most of the leverage here. They know the Packers want to get rid of him and move on. So if you're hoping for a giant package, a trade return, it's just not going to happen. I'm curious to see what it ends up being, but I've prepared myself for it not being all that good. I think the Packers just want to move on, get started with their reset. Frankly, I think it's time for a reset. I think a lot of people, too, are going to look back and say, why did they do this a year ago? And it's a valid point. They could have gotten way more in trade compensation a year ago than they're going to get now. I think the tricky part about that is he was coming off 2 back-to-back MVPs a year ago. And it's really hard to trade a guy at that point, even though I think even a year ago it was clear that this program was ready for a reset at some point. So now they're going to do it. They're going to pull the trigger and reset and move on with Jordan Love. And frankly, I think this whole thing 5 years from now, 3 years from now, is going to be determined by how good Jordan Love is. The Brett Favre trade was so much easier in retrospect because Aaron Rodgers turned out to be a multiple-time MVP, one of the greatest players to ever play the game. If Jordan Love can come close to that, then I think this is a lot more amicable ending, a lot more feasible ending. Brian Gutekunst looks a lot better in this whole thing. If Jordan Love doesn't, then it's an ugly ending, and I think Brian Gutekunst looks bad and probably, frankly, doesn't have a job in 3 to 5 years if Jordan Love isn't who they think he can be. So one final point, how do we look at Aaron Rodgers? I'm going to look at it positively. The guy was great for 15 years as a starter. I got to cover a couple of those seasons, a Super Bowl season. That's the one I'll always remember. He was just a really, really great player. Towards the end of his career, it became complicated. As Ted Thompson once said, he's a complicated fella. And that's going to be part of this legacy. Ultimately, he won Super Bowl title, and that's the sad thing about this, is that for a guy who was as great as Aaron Rodgers was, the Packers only got 1 Super Bowl out of it. That's not all Aaron Rodgers. I'm not blaming him entirely for that. That's an organizational failure in some regards. Some of it is on Aaron Rodgers, but not entirely on him. But just like Brett Favre, great quarterback for a long, long time, and each of them will end their career with 1 Super Bowl with the Packers. And now we move on from here and see what the Jordan Love era is going to look like. Check out madison.com. Jason Willey's going to have a ton of stuff on this trade when it happens, and certainly the end of the Rodgers legacy and era. We're going to have some video features, some collections of photos and memories from Aaron Rodgers' time. So please check out madison.com, and thanks for being with us.